Hello everyone, we are here at the Hockenheimring. Are you ready for the grand finale? Indeed, today this is going to be the last qualifying of the season. The weather is similar to yesterday, however a bit more cloudy, but also freezing cold. I think we've got track temperatures around 4 degrees, so it's quite challenging for all the drivers, for the cars. And here's René Rast. He's already sitting in the car. He's leading the championship by 13 points. As you can see, the mechanics are still pretty busy whistling around the car, and obviously the qualifying is about to start, and he seems very, very focused, obviously because yesterday he was quite ticked off about the race result, because apparently he thought there were 2 more laps to go, but indeed it was only one more, so he couldn't attack as he wanted to. But as I said, 13 points, he is in the lead. So it's going to be super exciting. It's so tight, and obviously the qualifying is crucial in order to collect as many points as possible. The engines got started, so let's get qualifying. Here's your commentator.
Thanks very much indeed, Verena. Welcome along everybody to the 19th qualifying session of the DTM 2020 season. My name's Chris Hartley. I'll talk you through what promises to be a really interesting session this, because there are big points at stake here. 3 points for pole position as ever, but because the gap is so close, because it can have a big effect on what happens into the race.
30 seconds until we queue up.
So René Rast, Nico Muller, the top 2, getting the countdown, ready to head out into a 20-minute qualifying session. Muller, the winner yesterday, his 6th win of the season, his 10th career win, drawing level with René Rast in terms of race wins, which also could prove critical. Should they tie in terms of points at the end of the season, then it will very much be a case of who's got the most wins, and one of them is going to have that because they're tied now on 6 apiece. Now, I've been doing some calculating. The gap at the moment is 13 points. So at the end of this session, the gap between René Rast and Nico Muller could be as high as 16 points. It could be as low as 10 points, depending on where they finish in qualifying and who scores points or who doesn't score points. Now, if the gap were to be 16 points, if Rast were to get pole position and Muller were to be out of the top 3 in qualifying, that would mean going into the race, Rast would only need to finish 5th or higher to seal the championship, even if Muller won the race, because he'd be 16 in front. If Muller won the race, got 25 points, and in 5th place, Muller got 10 points. He'd only outscore him by 15. So could be 5th place being good enough if René Rast gets pole and Muller doesn't. If the gap is 15 points, Rast would only need to finish 4th or higher going into the final race of the weekend. Same if the gap is 14 points. If the gap is 13, 12 or 11 points at the end of this session, then 3rd place or higher will guarantee the title for René Rast. And the worst case scenario for René Rast is that if the gap comes down to 10 points at the end of this qualifying session, i.e. he doesn't get in the top 3 and Muller gets pole position and the gap comes down to 10 points, still a 2nd place finish in the race would be good enough for René Rast, even if Muller won the race, because the gap between finishing 1st and 2nd in terms of points difference is just 7, and he'd be 10 in front. So either way you cut it, realistically, when we get to the race, whichever the outcome of this qualifying session is, Muller's got to try and get that 7th race win of the season. And Rast, at worst, is going to just have to finish 2nd, but it could be much lower than that. And it all rests on Muller winning the race, of course. Anything less than a race win for Muller, and it becomes even easier for René Rast. So an absolutely huge session, this. And there was very little between them in yesterday's qualifying session. As we look at Marcus Duesman, the Chief Executive Officer of Audi, who had this terrific season as a brand in this final year of Class 1 DTM cars. In the middle of the picture, Thomas Biermeier, who is head of the team that runs Nico Muller, Team Abt Sportsline. And that team having an excellent season, wrapping up the team's championship with a couple of rounds to go. Hans-Jürgen Abt to the right of the picture as well, all eyes focused and just thumping the heart now, motivating himself as if he needs any more motivation. In the cockpit there, you saw Nico Muller just firing himself up. So Jamie Green's going to be the first to head out onto the track. René Rast is going to be just behind him, the other way round to what they went out in yesterday's order. And as ever, the session will be split into 2. So we're going to have an Audi champion at the end of this, that's for sure. But which driver is it going to be, Muller or Rast? And how will Jamie Green come into the fore? Because yesterday he was the only driver that could match the pace of the two championship contenders, and he was right there with them in the race in third place. A very edgy final lap. As Verena said, René Rast didn't realise it was the final lap of the race. When she interviewed him after the race, he was a little bit disgruntled, and Verena got to the bottom of that this morning, speaking with Audi, and he got the last lap board from the pit wall, but there is a digital display which overlooks the gantry just behind the finish line, the start line, and that apparently said 2 laps to go as he crossed it. When Jamie Green came past, just a couple of seconds behind in third place, it switched, so it switched late, and René Rast had got conflicting signals. The board on the pit wall saying last lap, the digital display, the official display, saying 2 laps to go. So he was saying at the end, I didn't attack because I thought I've got another lap to go. I wanted to leave it until the last lap to get past, rather than be the driver leading without DRS, without push to pass, going into the hairpin on the final lap of the race. Robert Kubica, who scored his 3rd points finish of the season yesterday, finishing the race in 8th position, fresh off the back of his maiden podium in the DTM at Zolder last time out. So it's 20 minutes of qualifying. They'll split the session roughly in 2. They'll have a couple of attack laps in this part of the session, come in, check the data, get the cars reset, and head out for what will probably be the final 7 or 8 minutes of the session by the time they've come in for a couple of minutes and made those checks and changes. So it'll take a couple of laps to get heat into the tyres, and ridiculously close it has been in qualifying so far this year. As I said yesterday, I think 48 thousandths of a second, 48 thousandths of 1 second, the difference between the top 2 yesterday, and that was only the 6th closest gap that we've had in the qualifying sessions so far this year. We've had half a dozen sessions where it has been less than half a tenth of a second covering the top 2 in qualifying. It's very, very rarely been more than a tenth of a second, so you are talking minuscule amounts. Just slight differences on one corner here or there can make the difference at the end of all of this. So Marco Wittmann, who's involved in a crash yesterday, looking to sign off what's been a testing season with a good result here. It's been a mixed weekend in terms of pace. At the start of free practice on Friday, Marco Wittmann, the double champion in the BMW, had all sorts of issues. Massive understeer. He had a problem with power delivery on the car. It was a bit of a lag between hitting the throttle and the power being delivered at certain parts of the course, but he got much better in the longer run. He went pretty well in free practice too. Then qualifying, it went away from him, and yesterday in the race, because of partly because of where he qualified a bit further down the field, unfortunately, he got tangled up in a first corner incident. Harrison Newey and Marco Wittmann both out on the first lap of the race, which brought about the first of 2 safety car periods that we had, the second coming pretty much at the end of the race, with just about, I think, 7 minutes left on the clock after Timo Glock had an issue with the car and went off on the way into the Sachs curve. That brought about a very tense battle. We had the top 2 in the championship as the top 2 in the race, switching positions several times, rubbing shoulders several times as well. There was more than one piece of contact between the 2. It was all hard, aggressive racing, but there was nothing really untoward. It was just 2 drivers not prepared to give a millimetre to the other. Terrific to watch it was, the battle, and hopefully we're going to get more of the same today. Verena spoke to a very relaxed Nico Muller after he took his win. He said, you know what, I'll sleep well tonight because, you know, there's nothing to lose. I'm going to finish second in the championship at worst, and at best I can go and win it now, try to win it. So my only option is to go on the attack, and certainly that is what he did yesterday. Although actually, the final lap of the race, he had to do more than attack. He had to defend because he had René Rast and René's teammate Jamie Green breathing down his neck all the way through the last 3 laps of the race, which is when he got the lead for the final time with 3 laps to go. So, starting to get to the point now.
5.7. Remember, push to pass and DRS at the end of this lap.
Just a reminder, they can use push to pass in qualifying in DTM this season to deliver a boost of extra 60 horsepower. So the sorts of times we're looking for, although it's quite a bit cooler than it was yesterday. 1:28.405 was the pole time yesterday, set by René Rast. So we're on this next lap where they really start to go for it now and build up the time. Robin Freins who was mathematically still in with a chance of the championship coming into the weekend, but had a tough day yesterday. Well, it was a tough weekend getting the car underneath him, really, all the way through, and could only manage a 7th place finish, only 8th on the grid as well yesterday. But Nico Müller could do with Robin Freins finding a bit of pace here today to try and provide some cover for him potentially. Because if he can get in amongst René Rast, Jamie Green, and take some points away from them, that could massively help as well. So a role to play here. Right, René Rast is the first to go into a charge, and he's now set the absolute best first sector, and it's a good one as well compared to yesterday. He's right on the money, 19.476 seconds. Not quite as quick as the absolute best first sector time yesterday, but it is only a whisker away. Freins gets a lap time cancelled, but it's no great shakes really, because that was really one of his push laps. He's just about to go on to that now. So René Rast is going to be the first one to lay down a mark here through the speed trap at the end of sector 1 at 179 kilometres an hour. But in truth, the top speed of these cars around here will be close to 300 kilometres an hour, pushing that way anyway. Right, this second sector, absolutely crucial. Looking around about 41 seconds. He's about to go over the line to end the sector, and that's 41.526 seconds, which again is very good. I think there's more to come, but I think this is going to be a very good first lap effort. He might be in the 128s, it might be a low 129 looking at the sector time so far. Depends how it hangs together in this final sector. He's coming into turn 17 now, through the penultimate corner, through the last turn at turn 18, getting on the throttle, accelerating towards the finish line, and over he goes, and the time is in the 128s, and it's a 128.577. So it's just about 1.5 tenths slower than pole time yesterday, but again, conditions have changed, and that's his first real attempt. Jamie Green's on a pretty good lap as well. He's all in all about 3 tenths down on the first 2 sectors. Müller goes through and puts in a 129.178 to go in between them. So Rast in first, Müller in second. Duval has gone third with the 129.234 in the early stages. Jamie Green was fourth, is now fifth, because Mike Rockenfeller makes an appearance near the top of the times. In second place, Ferdinand Habsburg has just crossed the line to go into third place with another 129.1. Rockenfeller, Habsburg and Müller split the three of them by just 34 thousandths of a second. But Rast has the edge. He's the first one into the 128s. He's gone slightly quicker than before through the first sector as well. 19.410 seconds, so he's shaved a few hundreds off there. Let's see what the second sector time is like. It was 41.5 before. It's 41.4 this time. So all in all, he's about a tenth and a half up on what he was through the first 2 sectors on his previous lap. So this is looking better, and it could be matching the sorts of times we saw yesterday, maybe even quicker. It might be the quickest lap of the weekend, despite the cooler conditions that we've got. René Rast then through the final sector to try and make this lap hang together and stick, but again, like he did yesterday actually, he's on a charge, but he pulls into the pit lane. So it looked like he was going to improve. Got a personal best in sector 2, absolute best in sector 1, but he ends up aborting the lap. So just the one push lap for René. Feels that it's more in the tank for the second half of the session. Green's back up to second, but not for long, because Müller crosses the line and goes back up provisionally onto the front row of the grid, 128.847. Freins is in the 128s as well. Best lap of the weekend by a mile for Robin Freins, 128.968. Pushes Green from second down to fourth. Mike Rockenfeller is in 5th place. Ferdinand Habsburg has gone second as he goes through with a 128.835. Ferdinand was quick in Friday free practice, but had a poor qualifying session. However, he's genuinely got good pace around here, I think. Never really was able to get into the mix of the race because of his grid position. Philip Eng had a pretty good day yesterday, but at the moment he's lingering outside the top 10. Sheldon van der Linde pushed right at the end of qualifying yesterday to get himself up into 5th place, having hovered around the tail end of the top 10 for much of the session. So don't rule Sheldon out. He only finished just in the points yesterday, but he was actually pushing for a podium for much of the race. He was on old tyres at a pretty early pit stop, and the second safety car really did him no favours as it brought the whole field back onto his tail, and then he really suffered with tyre degradation after that. Quite a few drivers came in for a second pit stop, including Robin Freins. Philip Eng was another, and Philip is pushing hard now to go through. Robert Kubica's come into the pits. Philip is just about in the top 10. There is René Rast already back, having come in before everybody else. So it's René Rast, 128.577 seconds.
You a new time domain to compare it. So the lap is red. You see the use of DRS was helpful.
Yep.
of course it would have been at the end, but I think it was the right choice.
Yeah, just too much understeer in the second push.
I see.
Too much understeer on the second push lap. Again, what he did yesterday. A good 2/3 of the lap, and then called it.
Big understeer.
Yes.
But he was definitely on course to go quicker than he'd gone previously before that. So there's more in the tank for René Rast. It's definitely a 128.3 or 4 in him, I think. Deciding to save the energy, save the car, save the tyres. 128.577 then, the benchmark time. Ferdinand Habsburg, 128.835. How often does this happen in the final round of a championship? You've got the title contenders that everybody's looking at, and then you've got a second wave of drivers and cars who aren't really even bothered about points. They're just trying to win the race or get a podium or go out on a high, and racing freely, free of the shackles of a championship to worry about. And they come into play as well, can make a big difference to where the championship contenders are if they split them or get ahead of them. So we've got Ferdinand Habsburg playing that role at the moment. It's in between René Rast and Nico Müller. He's second, Müller third. Robin Freins much better today, fourth place.
So we will go out in around 1 minute. Around 1 minute.
If I was Nico Müller and Team Ab Sportsline last night, I would have been giving Robin Freins as much help as I could with the setup of his car, because they need him to play a role. Like I say, the worst case scenario for René Rast at the end of this qualifying session is that second place in the race would be good enough, even if Nico Müller won the race. And there was only really Jamie Green was the only other car that was able to match their pace yesterday. If they get Robin Freins up there, get Robin Freins to be challenging for a second place finish in the race to take some points away from René Rast, that might just make the difference. As it stands then, René is going to be on pole position. He's got 3 points coming his way. Nico Müller is third. He's got 1 point coming his way. And so the gap would grow, as it stands, to 15 points. And if it was like that at the end of the session, then a fourth place finish or higher would be enough in the race for René Rast to seal the championship, even with a Nico Müller victory. Less than that required, of course, if Nico weren't to win the race. It's all if, buts and maybes, but the cards are definitely stacked in René Rast's favour. Nico Müller could really do with taking a point or two away from him here, if possible. Doesn't want the gap to grow, but he's got to find just under 0.3 of a second to make that happen, which is a fair amount in a DTM qualifying session. And we've seen that René Rast has potential to go even quicker, given how he was flying along before he aborted his second push lap. So they can see the order on the screen. Fabio Scherrer, who's been qualifying pretty well of late, unfortunately for him, a little bit further down the order as it stands. Thomas Biermeier, not the only team principal, watching on with a bit of stress. We saw a quick shot of Kimmo Nimetinen there, the team manager for Team Rosberg, René Rast's team, watching on, transfixed by this next 6 3/4 minutes. This could have a huge impact on the championship. It's about the points as much as it is about where you start on the grid. Remember, Müller started second yesterday, but by the time they got to turn 1, he was the race leader. René Rast, so cool under pressure. But you can say the same of Nico Müller. They're different types of drivers, but at the end of the day, their lap times are oh so similar. Their record this season is oh so similar as well. Same number of race wins. Their numbers of second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth place finishes are almost identical as well this year. They're the only two drivers that have been in the points in every single race so far this season. A 9-weekend championship, 18 rounds, all squeezed into just 99 days. This 18th and final qualifying session. More big points available. The drivers that have been the very best in qualifying have been, by a long shot, the top 3 in the championship, taking 29 points apiece. The top qualifiers, Robin Freins and René Rast, a few less for Nico Müller, but they've essentially all secured at least an extra race wins worth of points just for the qualifying points they've picked up. And it might just make the difference at the end of the day. I think it's 6 more points in qualifying this year that René Rast has picked up over Nico Müller. Right, Müller generating heat into the tyres. It's very close for second. Habsburg 128.835, Muller 128.847. 12 thousandths of a second between them. 128.968 for Robin Freins, 128.986 for Jamie Green. So the four of them all within a tenth of a second or so of each other. And then you've got Sheldon van der Linde looking good again, 129.084 in sixth place, best BMW so far, with Mike Rockenfeller seventh, Jonathan Aberdeen in eighth, Loic de Waal in ninth place, and Philipp Eng in 10th position. The race yesterday, Mike Rockenfeller was given a 0.3 second penalty after the race for contact out on the track, so that made that dropped him back behind Jonathan Aberdeen. So Jonathan managed to finish fifth in the end yesterday, and has pushed him up to 11th place in the championship. All eyes then on the road. They've done everything they can. There's 4 minutes left on the clock, and maybe 2 flying laps for each of the drivers to try and improve their times now. And it'll start the next time around for them, having done their best to find some track position and get some space on the track, gets the right amount of heat into the tyres without overcooking them, heat into the brakes, minds focused. You're talking thousandths of a second. It's the blink of an eye, the difference between these points for pole position. Silverware at the ready at the end of the day. Silverware already gained by the 2 championship contenders. But in which order will it be? You're looking into the eyes of Nico Muller then. A huge effort, more lap times being cancelled because of track limits at turn 1. It's always turn 1. And Muller backs right off now to try and find some space to give himself some room. Cannot afford to lose a sector time by being held up by somebody else. So he's just coming in towards the Sachs curve and out. Ready to go for it, ready to roll things up. René Rast is going to be, again, the one to set the early benchmark time. He should be, because he's just started his flying lap. Through into turn 1 he goes at the Ravenel curve, and he can see from the body language of the car just how hard he's pushing through that first corner. Are we going to have somebody in the mix from outside of the championship battle? A Ferdinand Habsburg, a Jamie Green. Can Robin Freins get up there and take some points away in the race? What he doesn't want to do is take some points away from Nico Muller, but he can't really affect that. He's just going to have to push as hard as he can. But that would be the nightmare scenario. Freins ended up taking some points away from Muller by pushing him out of the top 3, because at the moment they are 3rd and 4th. Right, it's a 19.456 second run through the first sector. It's not the absolute best. I think it's his 3rd best, but it's so close. It's within a 10th. And I think he's got enough for a second push lap, given how well he seemed to go for 2/3 of his second push lap before he aborted it. 19.642 for Muller through the first sector, 19.632 for Freins. So they are both behind him. Habsburg is quicker than Muller and Freins through the first sector, 19.497 seconds, but nobody has set a personal best yet in the top 4. Then you get Jamie Green, who has set a PB through sector 1 and through sector 2, 19.585 seconds, 41.443. This could be enough to get him onto the second row of the grid potentially, because that's 2 very good sector times. And now Nico Muller, absolute best through the second sector with a 41.342. That's a 10th up on the best that we've seen so far. René Rast, absolute best through the last sector to get the time down to 128.337. So mega final sector, and he's going to scream through on this lap as well, because there's more to come from him. Muller is going to have to seriously push on his second lap as well to give himself a chance. Over the line goes Muller. It's a personal best, 128.757, but he stays in 3rd place by agonisingly 0.02 of a second. It's Rast fastest. Green with his last push lap getting into 2nd place and taking a position away from Muller, and Rockenfeller's got into 2nd place as well now. So Muller is outside the top 3. He's not on for any points at the moment in this qualifying session with just 45 seconds to go. And a huge off coming out of the final turn for Habsburg, just in front of the commentary box. He's collected all sorts of Hankook advertising markers, and that's put paid to his chances of getting up there in the top 3 now, I'm afraid. Absolute best through sector 1 for René Rast, 19.375 seconds. 0.2 down for Muller. It's a personal best, but I think pole position looks a distant dream. Best he can hope for, I think, is to get 2nd or 3rd on this lap. I don't think he's going to be able to gain back 0.2 of a second. on René Rast. René's had a pretty good second sector as well, not close to his personal best, 41.466 seconds. Muller is a bit quicker, half a tenth quicker through the second sector, but he was 2 tenths down more or less through the first sector. So he might get in the top 3, but he's not going to get pole position. René Rast comes through. It's another really good lap, 128.358, not quite his best, but very close to it. But it's all about Muller now. Can he rescue a point or two out of this qualifying session? Because at the moment he's 4th and he's not going to get any points. Here comes Nico for the final time. Over the line he goes. Nico Muller puts in a 128.782. It's not enough. It's not what he wanted at all, and he's out of the top 3, and he's not going to score any points. And René Rast is going to go into the final race of the season with a 16-point championship lead. It's the perfect scenario for him. So now all he needs to do, by my maths, is finish 5th or higher in the race, and he'll be the champion. That's if Muller wins. Muller has just got to try and win the race now. He can't control anything else. But at least there are a few other drivers up there that might be able to challenge René Rast and perhaps take some points away from him. Got Rockenfeller 2nd, Green 3rd. Aberdeen came up to 5th place towards the end of the session as well. Habsburg obviously dropped back because he had that issue at the start of his final push lap and the end of the previous lap, coming out of the final turn all over the grass. Robin Freins, I'm afraid, has not been able to put himself in a position to help his teammate Nico Muller, because he is going to be, for the 2nd time this weekend, back on the 4th row of the grid, equaling again his worst qualifying of the year. Robert Kubica coming through in 13th place in the end, and there with a slightly dishevelled front right corner to his Audi, his Ferdinand Habsburg, and that's why it was right in front of the commentary box. That's smashing through the advertising hoardings all over the grass, ruined the end of one lap, messed up the next lap completely, and that was his push over. Up until that point, he looked like he might be challenging for a potential top 3 as well. But in the end, Ferdy ends up down in 7th place. And they were already, about 10 minutes before the session started, they were already preparing and repairing some of those marker boards. Whoa, he got right up in the air, didn't he? You can see from that angle, fully airborne, did a wheelie, front 2 wheels right up in the air as he bounced over the grass and through the gravel trap. So that was a proper wild ride. Here we go, from another angle. Watch it get launched in a moment. Not quite. We'll follow Sheldon van der Linde, who ended the session lower down than he managed yesterday, I'm afraid. Didn't get the push lap at the end that he wanted. So René Rast picks up 3 absolutely crucial championship points, which means, by my maths, 5th place will do it in the race now. The worst case scenario, he would have had to finish 2nd, so he's made life a lot easier for himself. Mike Rockenfeller 2nd, Jamie Green 3rd, equaling his best grid of the year, and that's his best qualifying of the year because he qualified 4th yesterday, got bumped up to 3rd with Jonathan Aberdeen's penalty. So Green 3rd, Muller 4th out of the points, Aberdeen 5th, 6th place to Deval, 7th Habsburg, Freins in 8th, Glock in 9th, Scherer recovered to finish 10th, Eng down on yesterday, 11th, van der Linde down on yesterday in 12th place, Kubica 13th, Auer a little bit better than yesterday in 14th, Harrison Newey, who had a lot of work to do to repair the car last night, 15th, and Marco Wittmann 16th. So there you go. It's 328 points to 312 now. Robin Freins is mathematically out of it on 269. So 16 points the difference. If Nico Muller wins the race, he gets 25 points. If René Rast were to finish in 5th place, he'd score 10, and that would mean, by point, if that was the scenario, he'd win the championship. So 5th place or more is going to be enough. Receives the congratulations of Mike Rockenfeller, puts in a superb qualifying performance to get himself up onto the front row of the grid. Kind of expected that yesterday, given how well he was going in free practice from Mike, but it didn't quite hang together. And Nico Muller, now knowing that life has just become a lot more difficult for him in the race in terms of trying to get this championship. He would have been on a real high after yesterday, but that maybe have just blunted his spirit now, because I thought he would probably have expected to be at least on the front row of the grid, given how well he went in qualifying yesterday. Just a bit ragged by the looks of it, and it's only fractions. I mean, he's 3 to 4 tenths behind René Rast, but there's nothing between 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th in that session. Rockenfeller did a 28.739, Green did a 28.755, Muller did a 28.757, and Aberdeen did a 28.781. So between them, half a tenth of a second between those four drivers. And Muller misses out on a championship point by just a couple of thousandths of a second. And how would that be a big blow if he were to miss out by a point at the end of the season? But he can't do anything about it now. All he can do is be positive, go for it in the race. And he's going to be well worth watching, isn't he? Because he's just got to go for it now. And nothing short of a race win's really going to do it for him. Unless René Rast has a disaster. Rast delighted with that. He was a little bit downbeat after the race yesterday. He's very much on a high now, clenching the fist. You can see the spark, the twinkle back in his eye. René Rast looking for his third championship title, gets pole position here in the final qualifying session of the season, and he gets it in style as well. It's also worth noting that his second best lap would have been good enough by a long shot for that pole position as well. Jamie Green then having his best weekend of the season so far, qualifying in third place, 128.755 seconds. And again, he'll play the wingman role to René Rast, try and protect him from those behind, particularly the guy that's going to be alongside him on the grid, Nico Muller. Second place for Audi Sport Team Phoenix with a 128.739 second lap, 16 thousandths of a second quicker than Jamie Green, was Mike Rockenfeller. He'll start the race from the front row of the grid. But it is René Rast with a 128.337 seconds who scores pole position. And an absolutely crucial 3 points to give himself a real advantage now going into the race. Let's hear from him now.
For René Rast, this really is the perfect scenario. You're in pole position and Müller is only in P4. And our commentator was calculating and saying that if you get at least fifth in the race, that means you will be the champion. So I guess this really is the perfect scenario for you, and you've got your sparkle back in your eyes, right?
Yeah, it's a perfect scenario, as you say. I mean, Nico has to win, but he's only fourth. So he has to overtake three people. And as you say, I might have to finish only fifth when he wins. So anything can still happen, but the car's on our side. And the qualifier, I mean, the car was just flying. I don't know what my engineers did overnight, but it was just incredible. I had so much fun. It was the last qualifier of these DTM cars, and I just enjoyed it so much. Just big thanks to my boys, my engineers who made it possible. I was just enjoying the whole qualifier, and now obviously looking forward to the last race.
Oh, we are too. Thank you so much, René. It's looking really good, and I've got Jamie Green there as well, because obviously, hey there, Jamie. Obviously, you're in a fantastic position as well, and also in regards to the championship, where René now is 16 points ahead of Müller. Do you think your role here is going to be a bit fighting off Müller?
No. I want to do my race.
All right.
I'm here to race.
So in other words, since you have the speed, you could still maybe come in between there and...
Well, I'm aiming for the win, so that's it.
That's what I love about you. You're always straightforward, and that's what we want to hear, we spectators, obviously. So best of luck for the race, and let's see what you can do. Thank you so much. Clear words there from Jamie Green. Back to the commentator.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed, Verena. Love it, yeah. No, I just want to win the race, says Jamie. To a point, really. There's less pressure on Jamie to do that role now, isn't there? Because there's less pressure on René Rast from behind. So there you go. René Rast on pole position. Mike Rockenfeller alongside. Jamie Green is going to start third. He wants the race win. His first of the season. Nico Muller has to battle from fourth on the grid. Another great qualifying from Jonathan Aberdeen in fifth. Loic de Val is alongside in sixth place. Ferdinand Habsburg, I think there was more to come, but he's seventh on the grid. Robin Frein struggling this weekend, eighth on the grid. Timo Glock in ninth. Fabio Scherer qualifies in the top 10. And then it's Philip Eng and Sheldon van der Linde on row 6 of the grid. The 7th row, Robert Kubica starts 13th, Lucas Auer starting in 14th place. And then we have Harrison Newey and Marco Wittmann on the final row of the grid. Looks to be a fantastic race coming up this afternoon. It's still all possible, but René Rast has his nose in front. Back to Verena.
Wow, I mean, this is exactly what we wanted, what we were hoping for. It's going to be so super tight still in the race, and we're really looking forward to this amazing race. And I think we've seen fair racing all weekend, and also Jamie Green, that's one of the highlights we have today. Him just saying, no, it's all about, you know, him also wanting to win. So René really needs to do this all by himself. Obviously, he's starting in pole, and Müller is only in P4. But, you know, anything is possible at this point, and we've seen so many amazing battles this year already. So be sure this race is going to be super exciting. You do not want to miss it. And we'll definitely be back later on to show you an amazing race. And now here are the highlights. Enjoy. See you later.